Hello? Hello? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. I am Mayor Sherry Cantor, and this has been a long time in coming. It has been a long, pun intended, road to get to this point. I just want to acknowledge and remember and think about Mary Ellen Thibodeau, who was so instrumental in bringing the importance of this road and the safety and this street and how important it is connecting our two primary commercial centers, but it is a commercial street and it is a very, very important resource for all of us, and the safety of this road really was a primary concern, and Mary Ellen had us all, everyone on the council. I actually run on that road. That's one of my routes. But many people had not walked on that road and feeling as vulnerable as you do on that space on the sidewalk was really eye-opening for a lot of the elected officials that joined us in a variety of walks at different times. This started in 2016. Actually, prior to 2016, there was a lot of feedback from Mary Ellen, a lot of the residents, and our own engineering department and our public safety officials on concerns on this road. And so initially, we received a $75,000 grant. Senator Bai at the time was able to get that for us. And it was a limited study. It only studied the particular road and not really all of the impacts that any kind of change would have ultimately. So as oftentimes things do, I'm not the most, I know patience is always something that I try to work on New Year's resolutions. I'm not the most patient person, but it does take time to process and to figure out how things are going to work best. And government oftentimes is a place of, probability. You don't want things to fail. We also talk about possibilities, but things really are important when public safety is of number one concern. So we are at a really important point right now. I want to thank our previous town engineer and community services director, now Dwayne Martin, for his tremendous work on this project. And so much input from all of you. Thank you, and thank you to the public that's watching. This will be a very informative session. We've got some wonderful feedback, and I know that I know that the majority, we're always going to have a couple people that might not be happy, but this is something that is going to move our town forward and preserve the public safety in our community. Again, thank you all for being here. I get the privilege to introduce our acting town manager, Rick Ledwith. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and welcome again to everybody, and welcome to our viewers at home who are tuning in. In a moment, I will introduce you to Joe Balskas, who's our consultant over at VHB. And the town retained VHB back in 2020 to assist us with the North Main Street road diet, and safety study. And as part of that safety study, we implemented the road diet back in August, which, as you know, starts just north of Brace Road and goes all the way through to Bishop's Corner. And as the mayor said, we had that really tight 4-lane road stretch going between Brace and Bishop's Corner. And as part of the study, we've reduced it down to 2 lanes. So we have a northbound lane, southbound lane, and then we have a lane in the middle for turning. And VHB will present their findings this evening, which is great, but I think the most important part of tonight is getting feedback from all of our residents in terms of your thoughts on the road diet. We want to know about your experiences with the road diet, so we can take those into consideration with any changes we may want to make with the final decision. So we're still several weeks, a little more patience, Mayor, Several more weeks before we make a final decision, VHB will be back in front of the town council in May, and then from there we will make a final decision. So I want to introduce some key members of our community development team that are here with us as well to help us with questions at the end of the presentation. As the Mayor said, we have our Director of Community Development, Dwayne Martin, with us. We have our town engineer, Greg Summers, who's in the back with the blue blazer. And next to him, we have Jim Brennan, our assistant town engineer. So we will all be available for questions at the end of tonight's presentation. And at this point, I'll turn things over to Joe Balskis with VHB. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Joe Balskis, VHB, Senior Traffic Engineer, Director of Transportation for VHB. I'm going to give a presentation, as Rick said. And the key thing here is in terms of questions and answers. I'm going to give you like about a 20-minute presentation. At the end of the presentation, we're going to take questions, okay? And we'll go through all the questions you may have. Raise your hand. I'll try to answer the questions. My team is here from our office that worked on this project, so we'll try to answer the questions. And then, after that's all said and done, make sure you get a cookie. We have cookies here. But we also have the road plan. What you're seeing here, there's this drone video here. We actually have the road plan, which is from sometime in the fall of the actual road diet itself. So we can go back there and answer any more technical questions on the road plan if you wish, and then we can call it an evening. So there's water bottles, there's cookies there. The bathrooms are in the back through here. So with that, let me turn off the drone video, and I'm going to go into the PowerPoint, if I can close this down. So I have about a 20-minute presentation, and if it works, there you go. So the agenda, I want to talk about some general observations that we have. I mean, the presentation itself is for an update on the trial. We were last in front of the public 364 days ago. We did a virtual meeting during the pandemic, and it was April 29th. We got the first comments, if you will, on the idea of doing a road diet. We had done some initial analysis for the town and showed that we thought it was feasible, and led to obviously the implementation of the road diet trial. And so I want to go through observations, some of our data collection. Whenever we do an engineering study, we do a lot of data collection. I want to go through that and talk about our evaluation measures. How do you evaluate the success or failure of a road diet? I want to talk about that. And then the role plans in the back, then we'll go into next steps. So with that, I'll go to my next slide. So update. Observation. So we've been meeting with the town staff every 2 weeks on this project from the very beginning through last week. And we talk about all of our work efforts, what we're seeing out there. We talk about some of the comments we received from the public. We talk about some of the operations. We make some modifications. In fact, we made some modifications to the road diet when it first was put in place in August of last year. We had some changes. Nothing's ever perfect. We put that in place and made some modifications to the paved markings and signing at both ends. We also talked about deliveries. There were some issues, concerns with deliveries. Are they going to block traffic? Snow plowing was something we looked at as well. Also, we looked at Mountain Road and Trout Brook. So the previous study back in 2015, 2016 looked at just North Main Street. This project, this study, was expanded to include both Mountain Road and Trout Brook. So we have all three roadways were part of our study for the implementation as well as our evaluation. And on the right-hand side here, this graphic you'll see there, this is the two-way left turn lane. This is the centerpiece of what we call a road diet. That center lane is what we call a two-way left turn lane, allowing turns on both directions from that lane. And this is actually in the back of your handout as well. So the handout with the agenda, it's on the back of that. So what do we do for data collection? In terms of traffic studies, traffic counts. We try to get as many counts as we can. We look at the volumes. We look at the speeds. We record speeds on the roadway before and after. We look at the queuing. We have the benefit of having cameras that I'll talk about later. Field observations. We've been out here since August making field observations, various intersections, various evaluations. The acronym you see there, TWLTL, we call it TWIDL, two-way left turn lane. You'll see it in the presentation. That's the center turn lane that I'm talking about. Then we also do traffic analysis. You saw the drone flight preceding this. We actually flew a drone in December of last year in the afternoon peak hour. I'll show you that as well. We also took a bike ride. We took a bike ride last Sunday, actually, and I'll show some pictures from that and some observations. So traffic counts. What are our traffic counts we're doing? We conducted new traffic counts in November of last year. The road dye started in August, so we want to let a couple months go by, traffic patterns get settled. We did traffic counts, and all these roadways you see, all these intersections, we counted all of them again. And I guess I could show you a little easier. Over here, yeah, I'll show you here. The three parallel roads is Mountain Road to the left, North Main Street to the middle, and Tropic Drive is to the right. So we counted all those intersections between Farmington Avenue and Albany Avenue, the entire study area of intersections. We also started to pre-pandemic volumes. We did speed surveys in August, September, November last year, as well again this year in March and April on all three roadways. We did speed studies. So we looked at the speeds before and the speeds afterwards. Cameras. The engineering staff and Public Works have these great cameras that we're able to make use of in observing traffic flow. This is a picture of the Brace Road camera looking north. We have cameras at the beginning and the end of the project. We're able to observe signalized operations as well from the cameras. We're able to observe the turning vehicles, as you see there, the twiddle I mentioned before. We also recorded. The town was able to give us some recordings of Fern Street and Asylum Avenue intersections. We had some concerns that were raised at those intersections during the road dye trial. We recorded video there. We observed, watched that video as well to see what was going on, since you can't be here every single day. Field observations as well. So we were out here observing some conditions you see here. There's obviously a semi-trailer truck making a turn, but the bus was the key issue we had. We had some questions regarding the ability of a bus to make a turn. Now that we've changed the striping, it's now narrower. So you can see there where the bus is turning, you can see the eradicated markings from the 4 lanes. And I'll show you a picture of that as well, ensuring that bus can make that turn. And so we're out there observing that. The signal phasing we were observing. Also, the twiddle, the two-way left turn lane. How is it operating? We had some concerns about vehicles driving straight down the center lane, concerns of head-on crashes didn't materialize. Also the driveways, how the driveways accessing and being accessed from the center turn lane. So one core part of our effort is the analysis. The VHP team was involved with doing the traffic analysis, updating the traffic analysis, using the traffic counts. We had some suggestions for time-ins. And you see here, this picture here is a picture of the traffic model at Fern Street and North Main Street. There's a lot of cars backed up there. That's what we were seeing out in the field. So we made some changes. We worked with the town staff to make some modifications to the timing. We were able to get the intersections coordinated so we had a little better operation out there. And so we were able to mitigate and reduce the queuing that we're seeing out there. And it's an ongoing review. So what does this all mean in terms of our road dye implementation? We have 8 criteria that we were using for evaluating the success of the road dye, success or failure. Number 1, safety, crashes. So our criteria is crash frequency and severity. How bad are the crashes? How frequently are they? How do we measure that? Using the data. We have the crash reports from the town police department. Operations, roadway, using the data, using the traffic models. The intersections, same thing, using the traffic models as well as our observations. Emergency services, a key component of this was emergency services. What were they saying to us when we asked them, how is this going? Public feedback. You've seen the public information meeting last year. You've seen the public surveys. We have also the website, the email. You can call the phone number. We compiled all those. That's another measurement. And then we also have observations for our pedestrian and bicycle usage. We also have observations for neighborhood. There's some concerns on neighborhood cut-throughs, as well as our driveway and intersection accessibility. So some of the results. This is part of the key part of the presentation. What are we seeing? What have we seen with the road diet? So crash frequency and severity. Reduced crashes and rates. What is the effect of that? We think it's a positive effect. The road diet has a positive effect on the crash rates across all 3 roadways. Okay, not just North Main Street, but all 3 roadways. And I'll show you that in a minute. Operations. Yes, there's some increased travel times. Yes, there is. You only have 2 lanes now versus 4 lanes, so it's going to take a little longer. Is it tremendously longer? We don't think so. but we think we can manage that. All right? It's manageable with the timings of the intersection we talked about. So we have reduced travel speeds, which can be a good thing. And we also have a moderate diversion of traffic. Between the pandemic and between the road diet, there are some changes in volumes. I'll show you that. Intersections. We have some increased congestion. If you've driven out there during peak hour, yes, it is more congested. It is. Can we manage that? We think we can. I think we have so far. So congested operations, we've minimized those. The queues, the backups, they're longer. They're longer because you have one lane now. We think we can manage that. We've been able to manage that at Fern as well as Asylum if you've been out there during the peak hours. Emergency services, key aspect here. No life safety concerns, okay? The response we receive from those departments, fire, police, public works, and emergency responders, no life safety concerns. So we're saying it's supportive in terms of the effect. And then finally, the other one we have here is public feedback. Going through all the comments, going through the public surveys, we've seen a majority of support in the road diet trial. So what does this all mean in terms of data? So I'm going to show in terms of data, this is the crash data. I know you can't read it. I know you can't read it. This will be available on the website. But across the top is, I need my laser. Sorry, excuse me 1 second. I'm trying to find my laser. Can I find it? Nope. Don't have it. Sorry. I thought I had my laser with me. So across the top, over here, the left four columns are Mountain Road. The middle 4 columns are North Main Street. And the right 4 columns is Troutbrook Drive. And each one of those columns is a period of time similar to what we recorded the crash data for the road diet. So for the road diet, we recorded crash data from September of last year through March. Okay? We compared that crash data, those 6 months, to each of the prior 4 years. Okay, going back to 2017. Do the same exact thing for Mountain Road as well as for Troutbrook Drive. And what we found is that the crash frequency dropped as compared to all those 4 years. So each column is a year from September to March. 2017, 18, 19, 20, and 21, meaning this past period, okay, to 2022. So from the crash data we received from the town police department, the crash frequency, the number of crashes has dropped for each of those years compared to what we have today. So it's a good thing, number one. Number two, the crash types are angle crashes that you see at congested intersections, the problem intersections, have also dropped for North Main Street. So the bottom line in terms of crash data, we have reduced the crashes on all 3 corridors from the prior years, okay? And the difference is, it varies from road to road, but the bottom line is our crash history, our number one criteria for the road diet is that safety, the crash data has shown to be reduced in terms of number of crashes and frequency and types of crashes, okay? Our speed data. This is a spreadsheet showing all of our speeds, and not going to go through all for you, but basically we're seeing reduced speeds. Reduced speeds on North Main Street as a result of the road diet. Because, why? Because the slowest car in a road diet is going to drive the speed of that road, okay? So the cars bunch up, the slowest car in front is going to drive that speed. So what we're seeing here is on North Main Street and other roadways as well, Mountain Road and Troutbrook Drive, a general reduction in speeds across the roadway system. Traffic volumes. Now this map is different. This has Troutbrook Drive on the bottom, North Main Street in the middle, and Mountain Road on top. And Farmington Avenue is the left column. The rightmost one is Albany Avenue. Across the board, we've seen from the pre-pandemic traffic volumes to traffic counts from November, we've seen reductions in traffic volume. Is it related to the pandemic? Most likely. Is it related to the road diet? Possibly. Except for the Farmington Avenue intersections with Trout Brook Drive and Mountain Road. We've seen increases in the traffic volumes at those two intersections. So Farmington Avenue at North Main Street, we saw a reduction. Farmington Avenue at Mountain Road, Farmington Avenue at Trout Brook Drive, we've saw increases. Is that a result of the road diet? Possibly. Is it a result of change in travel patterns? Most likely. But that's where we saw increases. Everywhere else we saw decreases in the traffic volumes. Traffic engineers, we talk about level of service, indicating the quality of operation and capacity and delays at an intersection. Level service A is the best. Level service F is the worst. So this is Fern Street intersection, and prior to the road diet, we had level service D. And we also show the queues, the backups in color, where blue is your average queue. You've seen an average queue during the day. Your longest queue is red. So in the current conditions, by retiming the intersection, we're able to mimic what was there before. Even though we reduced the lanes, we're able to mimic that by coordinating and retiming the signal. So we're able to address that. If we looked at this before January, it would be a little different. But because in January we implemented these new timings and coordination, we're able to mitigate the queuing. So the level of service from delay standpoint is about the same as before the road diet. Asylum. Now, Asylum was not coordinated. We connected it with Sims and the other intersections, and we're able to improve level service at Asylum, actually. A couple things. One, the timings. Number two, the volumes have changed. There's less volume there now, okay? So by doing that, by retiming it and having less volume, some were diverted, some were pandemic, work from home, we're able to achieve better level service at the Asylum intersection. Public comments. This is a spreadsheet where we have about 200 and plus entries in this spreadsheet of telephone comments, email comments that we have tallied, and we've addressed many of them where they had to be addressed. There was questions and concerns. So we've also email comments, all since last year. So this is just more of the data that we're tallying and keeping track of through the present day. Public surveys. As I mentioned before, we had 2 conducted. So last time we conducted a survey about the road diet before it was implemented. It was in August. Had about 500 or about 460 responses to the survey. We put the road diet in place in August as a trial, and then in the late fall, early winter, another survey, almost 2,000 responses to the survey. So clearly the road diet trial has resulted in having many more people participating and providing comments. And this is also on the town website. So other evaluation measures I talked about before, pedestrian and bicycle usage. So we didn't go out and count the bicycles per se, but we observed them. There's one right here from Sunday crossing Fern Street on a bicycle. We've noted that. We observed those bicyclists and pedestrian activity. Neighborhood traffic safety issues. There were some concerns early on about cut-through traffic, that I'm going to try and avoid the road diet and cut through Craigmore, some other streets. And we had some initial concerns on that. We did some data collection out there. We think they've abated. We haven't heard more concerns about cut-through traffic and speeding. So I think that they have abated. Now, the accessibility from driveways and intersections. This is a key factor with road diets. You are going to reduce accessibility. Why? Because you have the gaps in your traffic from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and depending where your traffic signals are located, you may have a platoon, a clumping of cars that are going by your driveway. And you got to wait for that clump or platoon of cars to go by. And you could be waiting there a little bit until that goes by. Then you get a gap. But now you're only crossing 2 lanes. Before you were crossing 4 lanes. You cross the 2 lanes coming at you and the lanes away from you. So you really had to cross 3 or 4 lanes. Now it's really 1 or 2 lanes you're crossing. But your gaps may have been reduced as a result of this platooning of traffic between the signals. So that's one effect that we have seen. We see on the cameras, we observed, we have some comments about that. Some drivers are saying they turn right out of the driveway instead of turn left anymore. But we have not heard anything about that in the last month. So, did do a bike ride. I rode my bike out here on Sunday to get a feel for what was happening from the bicycle standpoint. Didn't feel a lot of variation in speed. I was riding at 17, 20 miles an hour without really trying very hard. It's a pretty flat roadway. Cars are going by me, trucks maybe 35 miles an hour. So it didn't feel like it was high speeds going by me. And I don't know if anyone's ridden their bike out there. I don't know if Sandy, you've been out there with your bike or not, but it didn't feel, at least to me, that it was a significant difference in speed between a bicycle and the cars. So in terms of that, one thing I did want to note, the paved shoulders. So the town has cleaned the shoulders out, so it's a really smooth ride now. There's some spots that probably will need some thoughts about paving in the future, and that could be one of the recommendations. But for the most part, the shoulders were wide enough, sufficiently wide north of McFern Street. And we also did see, because of, there's a couple photos here in front of the church. So right here. So there's a great picture of me on the bicycle with the GoPro camera. And a lot of vehicles were doing this because I was riding towards the left line. I was trying to avoid, there's some debris in some sections, so I was riding closer to the lane. So many vehicles were doing this. They're using the two-way left turn lane, which is okay, to go around a bicyclist. We know in Connecticut, there's a 3-foot law. You must give 3 feet to a bicyclist on a road, and you can also cross the center line in doing that. That's actually a recent state law that was passed. So we did observe that. Not every vehicle was doing it, but again, didn't feel unsafe. There's this further up the road. I was more in the middle there, but I wasn't hugging the curb line. But the bottom line is, it did feel as a comfortable bike ride down through here. Okay, the drone flight. You've seen the video of the drone flight, and this is on the website as well. This was back in December we did it, and I want to walk you through a couple pictures there. So you've seen this is in the video. This is up at Sims, obviously. It just goes down through the quarter. And you look closer, you can see the eradicated markings from the 4 lanes down to the 3 lanes. This is the northern terminus. And I want to show you a picture here. This is Asylum. This is going down towards American School for Deaf. Again, this is during the peak hour, and there's a good picture here I want to show you right about here. So you see, this is Fern Street, looking north towards Asylum, and you see American School for Deaf driveway off to the left there. But look in the lane coming towards Fern Street. There's a pretty significant queue that's happening there. This is back in December. We observed that. We noticed that. You're sitting there for a couple cycles, and in fact, it was so far backed up that the cars front were already gone past the intersection. The other cars were trying to catch up like a slinky. So that's what was happening there. I was out there a couple times. We noticed that sometimes people were pushing the button for crossing Fern Street. That was exclusive pedestrian phase. That was stopping all the traffic. That was contributing to it, as well as the volume and the timing. So we talked with the town staff, engineering staff, and we were able to revise our analysis, retime the signals. So the queue, I wouldn't say it disappeared. It's certainly been mitigated from my observations from being out there, and it's working better. Okay, but this is an example of what we do when we do these trials to understand the operations. I think that was it. Also, if you've used Google Maps online, Street View, they have updated their maps. So north of Fern Street, in January, the Google vehicle was out here, and so north of Fern Street, you can go online, go to Google Street Maps, and you can see the actual road diet in place. South of Fern Street, it's still 20/20, the 4 lanes. But just point of information if you want to go online and see that. And this is the roll plan, and that's in the back of the room. This is actually real in terms of, this was from last fall. It shows the actual road diet in place. It's a color plan in the back of the room. We can go look at that after the presentation and question and answers. But this is the plan that actually depicts the actual road diet in place today versus a concept. All right. So next steps. We're going to take the questions and answers today. We're going to compile the comments and any written comments. So if you have any written comments, you don't feel like speaking, you can fill out a comment form, leave with us, and we'll make sure we'll look at your comment. We'll document your comment and address it as best we can. We'll be issuing a draft report for presentation to the town council on, I think, May 24th. And then after that, we'll be to finalize the recommendations for the town for keeping the road diet in place, removing the road diet, any recommendations with either one of those options? And with that, I'll conclude my presentation. And if you want to ask questions, you can raise your hand. We have a microphone. And we'll try to answer your questions as best we can. If you want to go back to the presentation, I can do that as well. If you have a question on the presentation, we can do it as well. Right here.
55 Hilltop Drive in West Hartford, and that is the street that parallels the driveway to the American School for the Deaf. And so it also comes out on Main and Fern, so I get to experience both of those intersections. I've given up going out on Hilltop Drive, so I go out to Fern Street and then try to get onto Main Street from there. You may have mitigated the queues on Main, but on Fern, it's a nightmare. And there is that speeding up of people trying to get through the light. I'm suggesting perhaps a green arrow so that people can make the turn and maybe have that alternate so that it makes it a little more livable for us. Trying to respect the road diet. It's even trying to come out on making a right onto Main Street, it's difficult. So that's one of my observations. My question is, how do you use these arrows? The arrows I've experienced in other parts of the country don't seem to be the same as these, and it seems like the arrows are right where you're supposed to turn, and you have to cross the solid line in order to be able to make the turn. And the way I was instructed how to drive is you don't do that. So.
Okay, let me try and answer your question. I was trying to get the plan up on my screen, but it's obviously not working. Let me pull up the intersection that you're talking about, which is back here. So you are on Hilltop. There you go. Sorry. Okay, you're on Hilltop right there. Yeah, you're on Hilltop right here. Sorry, right here. Here's Hilltop. It's not showing my mirror. It's got my laser. And you're trying to turn. So your American School for Deaf driveway is up there to the right. You're on Hilltop. You're trying to turn left, and you're saying it's you don't do that now. During the peak hour, you can't. It's tough to do that during the afternoon peak hour. Okay. So you've now decided to go to Fern Street and turn left there. Okay. So that obviously with the adjacent signal of Fern Street over there, that queue backs up and it's a single lane now. So that's understandable.
So that idea about the green arrow is something that you'll consider?
We are looking at that.
Okay.
We are looking at that.
Great.
Exactly.
That's great.
Okay.
The other thing was, so the question about the arrows and the turns. But even before I go to that, I'm sorry, the turning left onto Main, someone had actually provided a break in the traffic for me to make that left turn, but people were passing me on in the other lane. And I almost got hit. And I've lived there for 20 odd years, and this road diet was the riskiest experience I've had.
Yeah. So a couple things. So you had a question regarding the two-way left turn lane. How does that work? So the intent of the two-way left turn lane, there's instructions on the back of your handout, and it's on the website. The intent of the two-way left turn lane is to allow you to have your own lane to turn into your driveway or to turn into an intersection. That is the intent of the two-way left turn. And you can also have a vehicle opposite you doing the same thing. So you're basically sharing that lane, even though in both different directions, you're sharing that lane to make your turn. What we also know is that the two-way left turn lane is sometimes used as an acceleration lane. Okay, so you turn out of Hilltop, as you're saying, you're in that two-way left turn lane, and cars are coming this way. So that's what you're saying is happening. That's obviously not necessarily a safe condition. So that's why you're going to Fern Street. But that is what's been used in the past, that you turn left onto the two-way left turn lane, and you use that, and then you jump into your lane. But the point of the two-way left turn lane is when you have numerous curb cuts, driveways, is to allow cars to turn into their driveways from either direction. Okay, and you're not supposed to use the two-way left turn lane, you know, you're supposed to turn in your driveway, turn into the two-way left turn lane, then into your driveway. We have saw some vehicles driving down the two-way left turn lane. We've seen that a couple times, and then entering a turn lane. So the intent is that you make a turn to your driveway from the two-way left turn lane, and you enter the two-way left turn lane just before you make your turn. You don't drive for 300 feet and then turn. That's the intent.
But there's no broken line at that point.
Yes, it is a solid line, and then broken line means that you can cross that. Okay? So it's not a double yellow center line, it's a broken line. So the broken line means that you can then go from the through lane into the two-way left turn lane.
But if the broken line is not on my side, and it's a solid line on my side, I can cross it.
A solid line with a dashed line you can cross, yes.
It's a little different than a passing zone. I think that's where you're coming from, right?
Can you like show an example of how it's supposed to happen?
Let me go to the drone photos. Here you go. I think I have you. I think I have it. I think Hilltop is right. That's Asylum. Let me do that. Let me do the drone photos. There we go. Right there. There you go. So there's Hilltop right there. Okay, and the two-way left turn lane is on either side of Hilltop.
Right, it works there.
Yes.
I'm talking about the other parts of Main Street, where you're trying to turn onto like Whitman or Keeney, coming from Farmington Avenue.
The only spots where it does not have that is for turn lanes. Okay, see that right there, where the white vehicle? That now becomes a turn lane. But throughout the entire corridor, it is a dashed line on the inside and a solid line, all the way through the corridor. Okay, unless it's a turn lane.
Okay, so basically you ignore the solid line that's right here when you're making that left turn.
Yeah, again, this is.
You get what I'm saying, right? Could you explain it? Because I'm
There
obviously
you
not
go.
doing it.
All right, so let me go. There you go. See that? There's a solid line and a dashed line. That means you can cross into the two-way left turn lane.
Right, I think your question is about getting into the turn lane from the through lane. If you compare it to like a passing lane, Joe, if you're in the through lane, you're up against the solid line. And so in this case, yes, you would have to cross over the solid line to get into the turn lane.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
It's a little different than a passing lane.
So you're okay to do
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So here's the American School for Deaf driveway. This solid here and a dash means that you can't enter that. Yes. Yes. If there's no dash here, then yes, you'd be correct. But there's a dash on the inside, so you can turn in there. Okay. I lost my laser.
Yeah, hi, I'm Hank Schwartz. I live at 185 North Main Street with my wife, Lee Monroe, who's here. First, I have to say this. Overall, this is just an enormous improvement for those of us. Those of us who have driveways right on Main, those of us who have in the past tried to walk on what passed for a sidewalk, often with grandchildren in strollers. It is a huge improvement for those of us who are cyclists. I'm a cyclist, and I would never cycle on North Main in the past. I had to do anything and everything to go around, and now I can.
I got it.
One issue, the center lane is sometimes abused by people who get into it far sooner than they need to in order to turn into their driveways or to turn onto one of the other streets. I have experienced it as being abused by occasionally, very rarely, but occasionally, by people who think they can pass slower moving cars by using that lane. I realize that the lane mostly has to be open because of the number of driveways along it, but has any consideration been given to putting some pavers down in certain sections of that center lane that might discourage the sense that it's just a throughway to be used at will and slow some of that misuse?
So where you have road diets and you have a propensity of vehicles abusing the center turn lane, then there have been locations where they've done that. They provided cobblestones, they provided a raised median in between to stem that from happening. We haven't seen that here, but we will consider it. We will consider it, certainly. It's always been an issue with maintenance, maintaining it. It's also an object in the middle of the road, but we'll take that consideration. We'll take a look at it. And where there are situations where you may have that happening, we'll look at that.
So I'm not arguing that it's happening frequently,
Yeah.
And there's a trade-off. I appreciate, in cost, but the trade-off is between cost and safety, I think, in some regards. So I hope you will give it consideration.
Yeah, I'll tell you, if the crash data was indicating that we had a problem, we would definitely be looking at it in earnest. But we'll consider it. We'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at that. There are a couple locations that we considered that, and we'll consider that going forward. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Harrington, and I live at 25 Wynwood Road, and I echo Hank's comments about how much better it is to walk down North Main Street and how much safer it feels. Wynwood Road is one of those unusual roads that we don't have any other exit out of our street. And during the bridge repair, we did have the luxury of a traffic light. And that was really great, because trying to cross as a walker, crossing North Main Street is really tricky any time of the day. It's not just, high traffic time. And I was wondering, since we have the School for the Deaf as a neighbor, and we have people on Wynwood Road who have no access to cross the street, and since there's not a traffic light there's one on Asylum and one on Fern, so it's a long stretch without any way of stopping the traffic. Would you possibly consider like a blinking light or something that people could access so that they can cross the road?
So we have considered that, and that is being reviewed. So you're talking, this is the old crosswalk from the bridge construction. This is about the midpoint between Asylum and Fern, and we've actually have looked at that. So we are reviewing that, the potential for need to have a crossing at that point between the two traffic signals because of, as you said, Wynwood and the residential development in the area. Is that a natural crossing point? So we are reviewing that. We are reviewing it.
Particularly because there's also a curve in the road there. And
Yes.
people tend to go faster as well. So, there's a lot of reasons, I think, for having the ability to cross the street. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah. So my name is Nadia Sopa. I live on 37 Middlefield Drive. In that horseshoe neighborhood, the Montclair Loop, that area. I just wanted to actually echo that point. There are actually 3 schools on the other side of the street. You have ASD, you have Buckby, and you have the Montessori School of Greater Hartford. And you have several families, a bunch of kids that go into Buckby, and lots of families that actually really like to walk or bike. And crossing at Fern with kids is even though with the road diet and everything, is definitely not the kind of the safest thing. And we always have to go all the way up, crossing, and then going all the way down. And you see oftentimes, just people crossing exactly at that point, totally unsafe. You have the bus stop that's right there. You have ASD students that crossing right there. This seems to be just, that would be such an improvement, I think, especially given the experience when the bridge construction was there and we had that light. You saw people out and about, it was really great. So I really hope that that's very strongly considered.
We are reviewing it. We talked about it at our meetings with the town staff. It wasn't in the scope of our project per se to look at crossings, but we are looking at it. We're aware of the issues. The issues have to do with, is it a good location? Is there demand? Is it a mid-block crossing? Do you have to have refuge islands in the middle for the pedestrians crossing there? So we are reviewing it. We are reviewing it.
Thank you. My name is Matt Warschauer. I live at 115 North Main Street. I no longer feel like I'm going to die every time I walk onto my sidewalk.
when I'm simply walking, or when I'm mowing my lawn, or whether I'm clearing the snow, I don't feel like I have, I mean, it really is a massive, massive change. I'm a big walker. I see the changes both in driving and in walking. Does it sometimes take a little longer to get out of my driveway? Sure, but that tiny bit of time, it's so worth it. I would also like to echo what others have said. We absolutely need some type of signal at that intersection we were just talking about. There's no other place to cross the street. There is a bit of a turn there. The traffic does speed up over that bridge. And for those neighborhoods where you're talking about coming in and trying to cross over to Bugby, it's extremely hazardous. Even if it wasn't a standard traffic signal that stopped all the time for the flow of traffic for cars, but rather was just a signal that could be pushed for pedestrian use, would make all the difference in the world. But what I'm really interested in, and I couldn't see on your chart for the PowerPoint, is the reduction in accidents. Can you give us an indication of some specific numbers there?
Yes, I will. Yeah, so real quick to your point, I think what you're asking for in terms of the crossing, you mentioned the sight line, and that is an issue for us to consider in any kind of pedestrian crossing. Make sure the pedestrian can be seen by the vehicles. So it sounds like what we typically use in a situation like this, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, that we call them. And they're basically yellow, they emit a yellow flashing. We'll look at that in terms of to meet the criteria for this type of crossing, but we'll look at that. That's what I think you're saying, as opposed to a full-blown traffic signal. Because then if you have a signal here, that might interrupt your flow even more. But regardless, we will look at that. So, back to the crash data, and I wasn't going to do this, was I? I was going to do it like this. Let me see here. All right. So the crash data itself. I have my laser now, so I can point to it. Okay. So here, North Main Street corridor, we have 16 crashes recorded. Okay, right here, 16. I know it's hard for you to see. 16 crashes recorded since September to March. We had September to March 2021. We had 51 crashes. September 2019 to March 2020, we had 34 crashes. September 18 to March 19, 24 crashes. September 17 to March 2018, 18 crashes. So the 16 crashes that we have here are a little bit less than the 18 from 17 to 18, but as you can see, they expanded as you went for. So in terms of crash rates, we have a fraction, 0.83, a crash rate versus well over 1 or 2 in terms of crash rate for the previous year. So if that gives you a good number, we're seeing a significant decrease in crashes on North Main Street. And we'll have this more embellished, if you will, for more graphic for a report. So that's the sheer number is 16 crashes from September to March. We haven't done April yet. And this is only, let me be clear, this is 7 months, right? March, 7 months. So it could change as you get to the summer months, okay? You really want 1 year of data at least. But the data we have, we try to compare it to the previous years, the same time of year. We got a fall, we got a winter, a little bit of spring. We made that comparison. It could change. We need a full years of data, but right now the data looks positive, as I said before.
Yes, my name is Barry Pickett. I live at 26 Hathaway Drive. And please keep that chart up there if you would.
Oh, sorry. Absolutely.
Because when you first presented this, I thought there was something I didn't quite understand about it. You showed, of course, on Main Street that the accident rate had gone down, which, of course, was the main purpose of this project. But you also showed that it went down both on Mountain Road and Trout Brook. And I know that one of the concerns when this was started was that doing this on Main Street would actually divert more traffic to Mountain and Trout Brook. So I'm just wondering to what do you attribute the reduction in traffic accidents on these other roads?
It's a great question. So number one, we saw the pandemic. We saw a pandemic happening obviously during all this. So volumes have gone down. And so when volumes go down, typically you see reduction in crashes. Typically. What's happening now across the United States is actually reverse is happening. We're seeing actually fatalities skyrocketing while volumes are going down. But in this case, it looks like from the data, from the actual reports we get from the police department, that we think the volumes being reduced from the pandemic on Tropic Drive and Mountain Road have been part of the reason why we saw reduced crashes. That's part of it that we're seeing here. Because you're right, it doesn't seem like it makes sense that if you reduce, okay, 4 lanes to 2 lanes, that makes sense. Okay, but what about Mountain Road? That hasn't changed, and Tropic Drive. So it's a combination of factors. We saw some diverted traffic volume, but we also saw the pandemic as a result, and the change in travel patterns. So I will tell you that the peak hours have changed. We no longer have a 4 or 5 o'clock peak hour. It's now, what, 3 o'clock with work from home and parents taking their kids to school. So peak hours have changed. The morning peak hour is different. It's no longer the morning peak hour. So that may be part of the explanation. Reduced volumes and change in travel patterns of drivers. Are no longer driving all during the peak hour. It's more spread out throughout the day. So we think that's part of it. And that's actually part of the reason why North Main Street as well. It could be that too. So change in travel patterns as well as change in traffic volume is what we're thinking is part of the reason for reduction. Now, again, this is going against what we're seeing nationally in terms of crash trends. We're seeing increases in pedestrian fatalities, bicycle fatalities, as well as motorist fatalities across the country, most parts of the country, because of driver behavior. Here, we think the driver behavior is changing because of the road diet on North Main Street. Yes, we see some people using the center turn lane, but the driver behavior seems to have been calmed, if you will, calming down by the lower speeds and the single lane. Okay, so that's the best I can explain it. The data's there. That's the only way we can see in terms of why is there also some reduction in crashes on the parallel roads. But that's the only way we can explain it. Okay, volumes and patterns.
Hello, Chris Torino, 17 Wiltshire Lane. 17 Wiltshire Lane, which is over by the old Yukon property that still hasn't been developed.
Yep.
I just thought I'd throw that out there. Anyway, just a couple of comments, and I know you said this, but I'll say it again like you did. We don't know the result of COVID. My wife and I haven't been in the office in 2 years, and we're still working. I'm sure there are many people in our town that are home. I don't think you're seeing the volume that we saw before, as you said, that's one of the major reasons. I'm just throwing that out there. Number 2, this town's building apartment buildings or low-income housing like it's going out of style. Where do you think all those cars are going to go? We've got them at Bishop's Corner. We've got the old St. Mary's home. All these people have to get to work and go places. So, that's something, I know that's not a your thing, but that's something everybody needs to think about. We're developing like crazy. Now they're going to get rid of that kids museum and put more apartments down there. Where do you think those cars are going to go? So I'm just throwing that out there. As far as streets go, it takes me 10 minutes from my home near St. Joseph's University to get to 84 on Trout Brook Road now, today. That's before you guys slow this down. So, and none of the lights are coordinated. I'm always told we can't do it, and I always use this example. I grew up in Southington. Route 10, yes, it's a state road. If you look at Route 10 in Southington, all the lights turn green and all the lights turn red. You see that in some other states. If we considered something like that on any of these streets, I think it would help with the traffic flow a lot, instead of stopping and starting and stopping and starting all the way out to the highway. Just a suggestion. But anyway, as far as the accidents go, I'm telling you, I don't think we've seen the capacity that we had before everybody got hit with COVID. It's just a comment. And then, what else do I have to say? I think that's about it. So, I did take a bike ride on North Main myself about 2 weeks ago. I haven't been up there in a while. Still a rough road to drive on. I agree with some of the folks here tonight that it's different than it was, but without the road diet, I would never do any of these main roads. I do the back roads, and you see a lot more West Hartford doing the back roads than you do on the main roads. But I have to agree that, it's nicer to have that bike path and stuff. And unless someone's a maniac, I'm one of those cornballs who follows the speed limit. I'm sure you say everybody says that, but we do. In fact, people beep at you and flip you off, but that's what I do because I feel bad for people on Trout Brook and Mountain Road and North Main with the speeders that run through there. And I had little children, and I know what that's like. But with that said, it did slow things down. So, these poor people are paying taxes too. They can't even get out of their driveway or really have anybody park in front of their house, which is a whole other subject. So thank you very much.
Let me try and, there's like 3 or 4 things there I think I do want to talk about. You mentioned development, the apartments, residential, the Yukon, what's going to happen there. Yes, that will generate traffic, but residential isn't a high generator of traffic, okay? From all the studies that we've seen and done, you know, you see one unit, is that going to be 20 cars a day? No, it's not a high generator of traffic. So it does sound like a lot, but number one, it's not a high generator, number one. Number two, work from home is changing that. And is that going to go, are we going to go back to a full-time in the office? Maybe not, who knows? Is it going to be hybrid? Certainly the patterns have changed. So don't want to scare everyone saying, oh, all this traffic. The traffic can be accommodated. Unless you're talking about thousands of units, if you're talking about a couple hundred units here and there, you're dispersed on different ends of North Main Street. They're not all going at the same time. The patterns have changed. So we think there is some capacity to absorb some of that traffic, number one. Number two, you talk about Tropic Drive. I think the coordination of Tropic Drive. That could be a recommendation from the study. If it's not coordinated now, that can be a recommendation, all right? The issue with that also is that coordination of signals is a function of your spacing. Southington, Queen Street, that's a nightmare right now, Queen Street. I was down there last week. That's about 84. It's not coordinated, okay? Because there's either problems in the system or there's too much volume. But when they're close together, you need to coordinate them. These signals here, Fern, Asylum, Sims, we have coordinated that. But as soon as you change your spacing, your flow becomes more randomized, right? So you have more spacing. So it's a function of your distance between your signals. And the other comment you had was what? What am I missing? No, okay. Okay. All right. But thank you. Oh, here comes Sandy. They're throwing me a softball.
Sandy Fry, 15 Windwood Road. One question, Joe, for the crosswalk, along with an RRFB, can you look at a hawk signal, what they used to call the hawk? Because that's timed that, it will go red for the traffic while a pedestrian is there. And once the pedestrian is through the crossing, it flashes red. So a driver treats it as a stop sign. And it won't really slow things up a lot. It's not like putting a whole pedestrian phase into the middle of that area. I would love to see one of those signals in West Hartford. I think that's a really good location to consider it. I do a lot of biking, walking, and driving from just north of ASD to west of the center on a regular basis at different times of the day. And it's a drastic improvement to have the road the way it is now, whether I'm walking, whether I'm driving, whether I'm biking. And when I bike, I make a left from either Walton, Keeney, or Hilltop, and Whitman, Keeney, or Hilltop. And sometimes you sit there and think, oh my gosh, when am I going to get a break? But there always is one. And it feels so much better to have that street available as a bicyclist. And I don't ride as fast as you do. And I don't feel the speed of the cars. I feel very comfortable on that. So it's improved my travels for all different modes.
Thank you, Sandy. So Sandy's referring to a next level of pedestrian crossing control. And so we as engineers, we have criteria that we use to evaluate a crossing. Can it be uncontrolled? Can it be a crosswalk? Can it be a rectangular rapid flasher beacon? Can it be a pedestrian hybrid beacon? Can it be a full signalization? There's like 4 different ones. So we'll look at that. We have criteria that we follow, that Connecticut DOT puts out, that we'll have to look at that and see in terms of volumes, pedestrians, and number of lanes and control. So we'll look at that as part of our review. So she raised a point. It's a more controlled crossing for pedestrians, but we'll look at that.
Thanks so much. My name is Isaac Kamola. I'm at 138 North Main Street, so like 4 houses down on that picture right there.
Oh, okay.
And living across from the School for the Deaf, I live in probably one of the most difficult places to pull out onto North Main. And I gotta say, even with the road diet, it's half, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, because when it was 4 lanes, It was also really, really, really hard to get out of my driveway, and it still is hard, but it feels just a lot safer to get out of my driveway. And so, sometimes there's a backup, but it really hasn't been that much of a big deal, and especially in a place where you would expect it to be a big backup. I haven't noticed that at all. But also, I think that something that I have noticed, and I know that the plural of anecdote isn't data, but that one thing that I've noticed is in my own driving habits, right, is that I come from the West Coast. We're a little bit more chilled. We don't race. We don't run yellow lights. We don't run red lights. We're just laid back. But after living on North Main, it turned me into a maniac, right? Trying to weave in and out, and there's cars zipping by. And I noticed that since the road diet, it's just been a lot more calm and steady to go down that road, just much more relaxing, not hectic at all. And just really, I just want to thank you and thank the town for doing this, because it has been just a huge improvement in quality of life. There's nothing worse than trying to shovel snow with a car that's going 50 miles an hour 2 feet away. I mean, it's just like really, really harrowing. And, so I just think that it's a great improvement, and hope that it stays in place, because it's been really phenomenal.
Thank you.
Kirsten Kilborn, I live at 207 North Main, and I've been there about 18 years now with my husband, and we have 2 wonderful children. And just yesterday, or 2 days ago, Amelia here was picking dandelions in our front yard. And I tell you, if this road diet wasn't in place, I would have rushed out of the house and grabbed her out of our front yard as quickly as possible, because I lived in fear of my children being hit whenever they were outside. And we have a completely fenced-in backyard, so it's perfectly safe for them back there. But in a million years, I would have never let my children go in the front yard. And now, I mean, I'm still obviously super conscious of it, but we just feel so much safer. And yes, it takes me a couple extra seconds to pull out of my driveway because of the ballooning, or whatever you called it. But it's so insignificant when I can actually pull out of my driveway at a normal speed and not feel like I'm going to be rear-ended every 5 seconds that I go in and out of my driveway. It's been a lifesaver. And honestly, if you had done this 15 years ago, I would have had children earlier, because it's just made such a difference. It's just insane. So thank you. I thank the town for it tremendously.
Hello, my name is Mark Sondine. I live at 498 Fern Street, which is about 13 houses down from the North Main intersection. And I just have a sort of an anecdotal observation, which mirrors a lot of the comments I've heard. The traffic on North Main is calmer now, and I also seem to notice that on Fern Street, in front of my house, it seems to be a bit calmer as well. So I feel like there's this bleed over effect, that if you come down North Main experiencing the road diet and you make a turn left or right onto Fern Street, you don't suddenly turn into that maniac again that maybe you were a year ago. I feel like there must be some sort of psychological effect of, okay, I'm still going to drive sanely and calmly down Fern Street now. That effect may be real, maybe it's not. I don't have the explicit data to back that up. But otherwise, I do use North Main for bike riding and walking. I cross North Main a few times a week to take one of my children to daycare at the Baptist church on the corner there. So I see the traffic there in the morning and the afternoon regularly, and I perceive this as a big improvement.
Thank you.
Carl Saplinski, 28 Hickory Lane. One observation, you said the number of accidents were down, but I'd be curious the severity, because the 2 main intersections, Asylum and Fern, are really blind intersections if you're crossing North Main on Fern, because it's obstructed. And same thing on Asylum, you're coming either up a hill or down a hill, so it's obstructed. And I think a lot of the accidents prior were people running running a yellow light on Main Street and hitting a car that they didn't see coming from those blind intersections. So not only the number of them, but the severity, because now if it's only one lane, the cars are going slower.
Excellent question. So I can't show you here, but the severity we actually have in terms of severity, this column here, we have fatal, non-fatal, property damage only, and obviously, thank God, no fatals in any of these roadways. We have 3 non-fatal injuries this for the road diet. We had 8 before, 9 before, 4 before, 4 before, so the previous year. So we saw a reduction in the non-fatal injuries for crashes. We saw 13 property damage only in the past 6 months, 7 months, 43, 25, 20, and 14. So we have seen a reduction in the severity, if you will, of the crashes across the board.
And the only other thing I would suggest, similar to what at Fern, having a dedicated green arrow on Asylum, because when you're Asylum coming up from Hartford, it breaks into 2 lanes there because you have the bike path in the middle, so you have a right lane and a left lane. So if you're trying to take a left coming down from Bugby, you are fighting 2 lanes of traffic. So the people on the right lane coming up Asylum feel they have a dedicated right-of-way to the right lane, so it's pretty tough to take a left-hand turn coming down from Bugby because of how the road splits, and it's really 2 lanes on Asylum.
So this was brought up before, some of the public comments we had online. And so basically, this is Asylum, and this is looking south. So there's a right turn lane from Asylum westbound onto North Main Street. There's a through left lane. So you turn left to go south and go straight onto Asylum. And there's 1 lane on Asylum here. Okay? And so you raise the point of turning left here. Before you had 2 lanes, so you can turn at the same time that this right turn lane was turning. We had some of those comments that you'd squeeze in with your left turn into the lane while they were turning. Now you can't do that. Now there's only 1 lane going northbound up North Main Street. So you are now sitting here longer as a left turner to go to Bishop's Corner, waiting for that gap. Okay, because you no longer can sneak in because there's only 1 departing lane with the road diet now. So we are aware of that. We have reviewed it. We've watched video of this intersection. I've been out there myself and watched it. And the key question there is, how much is that backing up? Is it 20 cars? Is it 10 cars? How much of delay is that causing now with the road diet? Is that sufficient for us to look at restriping, widening, changing the phasing at the intersection? So we are looking at that, okay?
I think it's just during peak times, and all you need is a few seconds. Most of the time of the day, it's probably not an issue, but during those peak times, you can literally be at that light and not be able to take a lot further because there's no break in traffic.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. Thank you.
Sheila Ward, I live at 6 Lindbrook Road, so that's the road right next to the bridge construction.
Yep.
And I just want to mention 2 things that I think are really so much better now with the road diet. The first is, before there were no shoulders at all. And one day I was going up to Bishop's and it was garbage day and I lost a side mirror off my car to somebody's garbage can because there was no shoulder at all. The other thing is when I'm coming home from Bishop's and I need to make a left turn to go down Lindbrook, in the past I would always be riding in the left lane all the way down because I never knew when some idiot would be going 50 miles an hour and I wouldn't be able to get over to make my left. And of course now I don't have to do that anymore. So, and it's definitely slower. So I really appreciate this. I think it's great.
So she's raising a point, and someone else mentioned it before, driver behavior. Driver behavior is what we're seeing is part of the cause for these rising fatalities across the country, even though volumes are going down. And I think what's happening here, it sounds like anecdotally that the road diet is calming the drivers down. And the crazy drivers are frustrated and they're going elsewhere. So I really do. That's a possibility that because you can't drive down North Main Street as fast as you wanted to go before. You had 4 lanes, you could weave in and out of traffic. You can't do that now because the slowest car is the pace car. So maybe that's what's happening. Maybe the maniac drivers are going elsewhere. Maybe so. But that seemed like is as a possibility. So I like to think that.
Carl Saplinski, 28 Hickory Lane again. One other comment, and this is kind of out of the scope or right at the beginning of the scope of the diet. If you're coming from Farmington Avenue, if you could make a no left turn onto Brace Street, because you get a lot of backup there. You know, so it's right at the start of where the road diet starts.
Yep.
But when you have, you know, 2 or 3 cars trying to turn down Brace Street, it backs actually traffic sometimes up into Farmington.
Yeah, we are aware of that. We've done travel time studies up and down North Main Street, and we've gone from Bishop's Corner down to Farmington Avenue, and I can tell you we spent 3 minutes at Brace Road intersection as well, and the volume that's there. Yeah, that's an ongoing issue. That'll probably be looked at another project, and that may be a recommendation of this project to be reviewed at a future project. The other part of it too is also, can you extend the road diet from where it ends near Loomis down to Farmington Avenue, and vice versa up to Bishop's Corner? So that's also being looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay Stange, 177 Auburn Road. I just want to, before I make a comment, I just wanted to thank Dwayne Martin and Mayor Cantor and the town council, as well as the consultants that have worked to make this road diet trial happen. I think it's been a phenomenal success, and I'm grateful for it to be underway. I'm relatively new in town. I've been here 2 years, but I came from a community where I was a community leader, and we took 20 years to get a road diet in place. So the 8 years that the community spent working hard to make this happen, 12 years less than it took us in my last town. So congratulations on that. My comment is that I think that it doesn't matter how much we do in terms of signage or enforcement. People will drive to the speed that a road is designed. And so here in West Hartford, which is a place that I love living with my family, what I've noticed is that many of our streets are designed very, very wide. On Auburn Road, it's a 40-foot wide road, and people regularly drive 40 miles an hour down the road because it's really wide and they're given the space to do so. So I think that one of the best things we can do to make our streets safer is to make them narrower, to design them to be driven on more slowly. And of course there's a trade-off. I drive, I walk, I ride my bike, and the congestion that happens when a road is slowed can be frustrating for a driver. But I just want to point out that every little bit that we can reduce speeds by making the road design safer like you've done here is going to be a big victory for us in terms of safety. When someone is hit by a car going 20 miles an hour, they have a 5% chance of dying. But if they're hit by a car going 50 miles per hour, they have a almost 0 chance of surviving. So every 5 miles an hour that we can slow down traffic makes our roads a lot safer for our kids and our families. And I'm really grateful for this one. I quibble with the 12-foot center turn lane. I feel like it could be easily 10 or 11. I want our emergency responders to feel like they have the space they need to get through, but I think that wide center lane invites a little bit of speeding and a little bit of risk taking that it doesn't need to. So my quibble is on that center turn lane, which I think I wish was reduced. But thank you very much. Congratulations on the great numbers that you're showing, and thanks for doing this.
So just to respond to that. Not working? No, this is not working. Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I'll talk without it. It's not. There you go. How about now? No? Testing. No?
Testing. All right. So Jay, just to respond to that. Yeah, it's been a comment since day one from this. We know the phase 1 study recommended a 10-foot center turn lane, 2-way left turn lane. And we've done studies. We've looked at other communities. We talked to the emergency services. They wanted 14, actually, in the town. and we convinced them to go with 12 feet. You will not find a road diet in this type of community with a 10-foot turn lane, center turn lane, around the country, okay, from ones that we surveyed. They're all at least 11 or 12. So, but to your point, we're 6 months, 7 months into this road diet. This is a project that can change in the future. So at some point in the future, and it might be one of the recommendations, possibly, if this is deemed to be a success, that the town could evaluate that, changing that. Don't see it going to 10 feet, don't see it going to 11 feet, but the town in the future can certainly evaluate that at some point in the future if emergency services, and it comes down to them, really does, and crash data, that they feel that a narrowing is okay. Because from my standpoint, I can't argue with the fire chief and the police department. That's a life safety issue. There's no argument for me as an engineer that they take precedence. So if they feel the 12 foot's too narrow or the 11 foot's too narrow, then we have to go with that. But I will say that we have talked to other communities. We talked to Charlotte, who did a bunch of road diets, started with 10 foot and got rid of it. They had problems. They went to 11 feet or 12 feet. So just to make that point, I hear what you're saying. It'd be great to go to 10 feet and have more room, but it can't be at the sacrifice of life safety and response times for emergency vehicles. So that's why it's 12 feet. DOT recommends 14, 12 at minimum. This is in a more residential area. That's why we're okay with 12 feet. But again, at some point in the future, the town engineering staff can look at this and say, okay, talk to Public Works, talk to emergency services. Is this okay? And evaluate that at some point in the future.
Stephanie Bakarami, 152 North Main Street. I absolutely agree this is a huge success, this road diet. I don't want to take away from that. We've only lived there just over a year, so just before the road diet was implemented. I never used to drive North Main. I used to drive Troutbrook because North Main was so crazy. But there is room for improvement. There's a lot of room for improvement. There's no way that's a street that's treated as a residential street. And when you consider the number of residences on that street, I think that we all recognize when we live on these major thoroughfares that they are major thoroughfares. I just feel like it's an excess burden when you're asking residences to not just take the excess volume and traffic, but when there is excess speed, there's also excess noise and excess air pollution. I mean, the air is choking on that main street. The noise is so bad that for the first time in my life, I have to have my windows closed at night. Now it's landscaping season, those landscapers with all the electric, their stuff crashing and banging every time they hit a manhole. Well, those dips in the road, those manholes are permanent. So whoever's got one outside of their house, they're hearing that crashing many, many times over during the day and night. So I think there needs to be a little bit more of a shared burden of these stresses in life. I think people have to live on these major thoroughfares, and I think they should be treated as residential streets, which is what they are. And so there's no way in heck I'm ever going to get on my bike on North Main. I live 5 miles from work. I should be able to ride my bike to work. There's no way I can ride there. Nothing but these major thoroughfares, and I feel they're extremely dangerous. And yeah, I used to bike a lot. Walking, I will walk down into the town center, but that's because I can cut through the neighborhoods and do that. If I want to walk up northbound to Bishop's Corner, that means I have to stick on North Main, and it's stress. It's a stress. It's not a nice little walk, and yet it's less than a mile each way. So just want to make the point of noise and air pollution because nobody's bringing it up, and there are points on North Main where people are still going 50 miles an hour, and it's hell. It's hell. So congratulations on everything we've done. This is fantastic, but there is work to do.
Thank you.
David Kozak, 151 Cliffmore Road. I would like to agree with that sentiment that much progress is made, but I think maybe with some good hard thinking, creative thinking, we can make it even better. I biked today to this meeting down North Main Street. I typically don't come to the center on North Main Street. I'm an experienced cyclist. I cycled into work into downtown Hartford for years, but I still avoid North Main Street on my bicycle. I still don't think it's safe. So anything you can do, perhaps rumble strips along the striping, in case a car not paying attention veers off, gets a little bit of a rumble to get them back into the lane before they hit me, if I choose to do that. And I'm also wondering if increased enforcement of those folks who are using that center turning lane as a travel lane might give the same signal. I'm just guessing, but I'll bet it's the same individuals who are using that North Main Street and using that center lane as a travel lane rather than a turning lane. It may be a limited number of individuals who are doing it, but once they start getting ticketed, maybe they will stop that, stop that behavior. So those two suggestions: try to make better accommodations for improving safety of folks on bicycles traveling in that lane by using something like a rumble strip or any other kind of calming device, and to increase enforcement and to see if we can change people's behavior through increased enforcement of that prohibition on using that center turning lane as a travel lane. Thank you.
Thank you. I live at 482 Fern Street, which is just west of North Main. I travel to the Bishop's Corner probably 3 or 4 times a week on a regular basis. And since this project is completed, I pretty much avoid travel during the hours of 3 p.m. till about 7 p.m. Why, you might ask? I think you all know the answer. Bumper to bumper, long queue lines at all the major intersections. Now, if you're looking to reduce speed limits during my travels during the day, most cars are exceeding the posted speed limit. Most are. It's posted for 35 miles an hour. I almost always see traffic going 45, 50 miles an hour during the day. So I don't think this road shortening or improving has done much to that speed factor. It has affected speeding, however, during that window of, say, about 2:30 to 6 p.m., when the average speed is probably about 5 miles an hour. I compliment your aerial videos here. Most show no queues whatsoever. Very few queues. Living on Fern Street, I never had cars backed up at the Fern North Main Street intersection. Now they're backed up 2 or 3 blocks in front of my house because they can't make a left-hand turn onto North Main. A green arrow would help some in that regard, but I think we're routing a lot of traffic from Mountain Road down Fern that we never used to have before. This is an unusual project because going into it, there were no set objectives. It isn't a matter of saying, well, we're going to reduce speed limits down to 35 mile an hour average. No such objective measures were ever published. We said we were going to increase bicyclists. Again, in my travel, I haven't seen a half a dozen people on bicycles at any one time on Fern Street. And the same would go for pedestrian traffic. I'm not anti-bicycle, I'm not anti-hiker. It's just you have to look at what was the objective to be achieved in doing this, spell those objectives out, and see how this new project has affected that. Have we seen a reduction in speed limits? No, I don't believe so. Have we seen an increase in bicyclists? No, I don't think so. Have we seen an increase in pedestrian traffic?
No, I don't think so. Have air quality studies been made in this area? I'd like to know what the pollution problem is when you've got 50 cars backed up at Asylum, you've got another 50 cars backed up at Haynes Street, you've got another 50 cars backing up at Fern Street. This cannot be positive in terms of the overall environment that we're looking at. A lot of this project is subjectively based. We think the traffic has slowed down. We think we have improved bicyclists, maybe. Have we done other things that could be done? Most certainly. I've heard a lot of people talking positive, positive, positive. And yes, there are positive elements from this project, but at what cost have these benefits, if they are there, been conveyed to the general average person?
So let me be clear in my response. I reject what you're saying about objectives. There were clear objectives for this project from the very beginning in terms of safety. And as you saw in the presentation, we've demonstrated that it's met an objective in terms of reducing the number of crashes, number one. Number two, in terms of speeds, we've done speed study. We've done actual data collection out there. We've recorded speeds are less. Speeds have been reduced over the course of a day. Maybe occasionally you have a high-speed vehicle, but the data says otherwise. The data says we do have reduced speeds through the quarter. So we have the actual data, objective data, not subjective data, but objective data telling us that the crashes are reduced, speeds are reduced. We have more congestion. We've said that, and you've said that. We have congestion. Yes, we do have more congestion. That's a result of having from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. So yes, there is more congestion. Is that congestion manageable? We think it is. We think it is. You're identifying some issues at Fern Street. We're looking at that. Is there a need to change the timing and the phasing there? We'll look at that a little further. But in terms of congestion, yes, road diets will lead to more congestion because you have 1 lane versus 2 lanes. So that is happening. Finally, air quality. We have not done an air quality study for this. And traditionally, you don't usually do that for road diets. There's not usually concern for air quality analysis for emissions for a road diet. We can look at that and see if there's any studies on that across the country. But I want to make sure we're clear here. There was a clear objective for this project, and that was safety, number one. Obviously, common traffic, number two. We think so far, the data's showing us it's met those objectives. We've reduced crashes, we've reduced speeds. We have, the congestion has increased, yes. We think it's manageable, but I want to make sure it's clear here that the objectives in terms of the study were very clear up front. We presented those objectives here, and it looks like the data we've got so far for 6-7 months is showing reduction in speeds and reduction in crashes. Thank you. Anyone else? So, any more questions? I'm sorry. Oh, one more.
Scott Franklin, 29 Burr Street, former chairperson of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Group. And several years ago, when we first had our unveiling of this project, a client of mine came up to me and said, "Dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life." And I looked at him and I said, "You know what? When this is done, you're going to thank lots of people." And I ran into this person just a couple weeks ago, and he said to me, he actually apologized to me for what he had said several years ago. He said, "I made a mistake." He said, "Main Street has become a place to drive where I feel it's less frenetic." He said, "As a biker and a walker, I now can bike down Main Street and I can walk along the sidewalk." At that same meeting, Mary Ellen Thibodeau had been collecting from the sidewalks along Main Street pieces of broken antennas and broken mirrors from trucks and cars and buses. And she emptied them on a table in front of the senior center to make a point how dangerous it was for pedestrians. We are a far cry from where we were several years ago. And I think it's a real testament to the town that our town manager, our town planner, our town engineers have bought into this. And the people that are here today are overwhelmingly in favor of it. And lots of you have walked along in support of our group. Many of you have gone to people's houses to discuss with them your feelings about this. And I think it's just incredible that in just 6 years, we've come to a point where we've got a real change on Main Street, and it's a change generally for the positive. There are going to be some kinks that need to be ironed out, and that's been discussed today. And I'm confident that you'll work on those kind of things and try to satisfy the concerns of the neighbors who express them. But other than that, I want to say thank you very much for a great presentation, and thank you to the town of West Hartford and its employees for doing such a great job in making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. So, well, let me go to the end here. So, I think that's the last of the questions. You can go to the website. That's up here on the screen. You can also Google it. You can also email us at road.westhartfordct.gov. We respond to the emails usually within hours. You can also make a phone call. But I also want to point you to the plan in the back of the room. That's an actual plan. If you want to look at the plan, have any more questions looking at the plan, we can be here to talk to you about that. Please take a water bottle and some cookies as well. And if you have any more comments, any written comments, put them on the comment form. We'll take those, and we'll look at all the comments we receive, meet with town staff, and incorporate that as part of our report going to the town council. And with that, Rick, say something. What's up?
Thanks, Joe. Really want to thank all of you. You were definitely an engaging audience, and we appreciate the feedback. This will be taken into consideration with the final report and final recommendations. So thank you all. I want to thank Joe and his team for an excellent presentation, as many folks have pointed out. And I also want to thank our partners at WHCI-TV, who thanks everyone, and have a great night.